It's steady as she goes for Labor and a slight drop for National in the latest One News Colmar Brunton poll. Tonight's numbers show Labor is still out in front, but it will need the help of the Greens to govern. Labor gets 47%, National 32%, the Greens 6% and ACT is on 8%. New Zealand First took a slight increase, up 1% to 2%. That would give Labor 60 seats, National 41, ACT 11 and the Greens 8. 9 days out from election day and Jacinda Ardern is still out front as the preferred Prime Minister on 50%, but she's dropped 4 points, meaning Judith Collins is unchanged on 23%. Former ACT MP Heather Roy joins us now and former United Future leader and MP Peter Dunne is with us too. Good evening to you both.
Good evening, Lisa.
Heather, can I start with you? Who's going to be the happiest in all of this?
Well, Jacinda Ardern, I suspect. I thought that the Labor vote might have softened slightly, but as you said, it's steady as she goes, so I think she will be pretty happy. And ACT just continues its trend, and I think they'll be pretty happy with their 8% as well.
Peter, do you think that ACT is going to be the third biggest party in Parliament this time round?
Yes, I do. Whether they get 8% or slightly less or slightly more, time will tell. But I think they've certainly consolidated around that 7 to 8% mark, and they'll be the third player.
Do you think those numbers are real?
For ACT or generally?
For ACT.
It's hard to say. I think that there may be a slight over-emphasis, but on the other hand, I think probably pretty close to the mark that the party is going to have a substantial number of additional MPs and will be the third party in Parliament.
How worried should the Greens be, do you think, Peter?
I think they should be quite worried at 6% because they've got this historical tendency to overperform in polls and underperform on election day. So I think they could still be hovering on the cusp, and that would, of course, throw the numbers completely out the window if they were to lose all their seats.
Heather, when we look at this, while ACT might be celebrating their gains and potentially having 11 MPs, no matter how you do the numbers on the right with their potential coalition partners, it's still 68 to the left coalition and 52 seats to the right. The numbers still don't add up. I mean, where does it leave them? Well, out in the cold, doesn't it?
Well, you would think so at the moment, and you certainly wouldn't bet on them getting there. A lot does depend on the Greens. I absolutely agree with Peter's comments. I think that they are still sitting on the cusp. The margin of error of this poll will be around 3%, I should imagine, and so that's problematic. It's interesting to look at the wasted vote. So New Zealand First vote is technically now looking increasingly like being wasted. So the 6% of wasted vote, which will be redistributed amongst the parties proportionately. So there's a couple of scenarios there. Labor could potentially govern on its own if there's a lot of wasted vote, and if the Greens don't get there, it's looking like a different ballgame.
Peter, on the issue of Labor governing their own, you've been obviously in coalition, and even if they were to get a majority on the night, would it be wise to, take out an insurance policy and bring someone in with you?
I think it would be. You recall 2014 where National won a majority on the night and then said it would keep its partners but wouldn't do any deals with them, and then found a few days later it didn't have a majority. It had already signed its agreements, and then found that things like resource management change, which it wanted to pursue, it couldn't pursue because it didn't have deals with its partners. So I think taking out a bit of insurance would be a prudent idea, even if they're over the, comfortably over governing by themselves.
Heather, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I largely agree with that too. I think that we've got an MMP environment now, and there has been only really advantage by being there with other parties. I think that it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the Greens. And as I said before, that wasted vote. What I'm not sure of is what the don't knows were in this poll. Is that available?
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me at the moment.
I thought the figure's about 13%.
13, yeah, which is still quite high. Now, a lot of people will say that those people probably won't vote, but I think there's still a reasonable number of people who don't want to tell a pollster when they call how they're going to vote. So there's still a big margin in there of people who aren't declaring how they will vote. If they do, that could sway things quite a bit yet too.
I'm interested from both of you. While the Māori Party is not, moving the Richter scale here in terms of the party vote, do either of you think that they will get a candidate, Peter?
I don't think they will. I think they'll do quite well, though, so I think they'll be securing, if you like, a base for recovery in the longer term, but I don't think they're going to win a constituency seat, and they're certainly not going to get the 5%. They never have done, so it's still going to be a battle for them, but I don't think they're going to make it this time.
Heather, is it a two-term project for the Māori Party?
That's more than likely, but I wouldn't write the Waiaraki electorate off yet. The Māori Party candidate is certainly consolidating his support there, and I think that it's not beyond the realms of possibility that he might not win against Tamati Coffey. And if that happens, of course, that will bring the Māori Party in with an overhang. That'll mean there would be 121 seats in Parliament. Makes it just that wee bit harder for Labour to sneak across on their own if the rest of the wasted vote largely goes to them.
Peter,
there's another scenario here too, which Heather's just mentioned, the overhang. It is possible on these results that National could have a 2 or 3 seat overhang if it holds the bulk of its constituency seats. And that, again, will just make it a wee bit harder for Labour to get there by itself.
And just my producer Annabelle has told me that the undecideds in this poll was 8%, so around 8%. Yeah, 8% undecided. Peter, the National leader, Judith Collins, can she survive and hold on to the leadership if indeed she returns numbers in the low 30s as she is polling on the party?
Look, I think National's going through a repeat of what Labour went through during its years in opposition, and she's holding the line at the moment. If she doesn't achieve a credible result, just from even what we've seen this week, I think her position becomes very difficult to sustain long term. Watch Christopher Luxon.
Heather, your call?
Yes, I was about to say watch Christopher Luxon. I think that if she doesn't get what the National Caucus considers to be a credible result, I think she'll be in trouble.
Great to talk to you both. That is former ACT MP Heather Roy and former United Future leader and MP Peter Dunne. So that poll has Labour sitting on 47%, same as the last Colmar Brunton poll. National is at 32%, so that's down 1%, I think. Greens at 6% and ACT on 8%. And New Zealand First, slight increase there, up from 1% to 2%.